they hear the word cat, they don't know if that's the right word that they intended to say, because it doesn't mean anything to them as a sound. All right, so let's move to the parietal area. And that's separated from the frontal lobe by the central sulcus and part of the lateral sulcus. And it also has a primary sensory area or primary somesthetic area. And this we named as one of the major gyri. So this is known as the primary somesthetic area, but anatomically it is the post-central gyrus. So what do we mean by the post-central gyrus? Let's say that this half of the brain over here is from the parietal lobe. And that would make this structure right here the post-central gyrus, because this is the temporal lobe, right? So let's say that this is, for illustration work, this is our parietal lobe. And the post-central, our slice of brain, has gone through the post-central gyrus. And so when a sensory neuron comes up from the spinal cord, passes into the brain, it's going to synapse in our thalamus, which is in this region right here, that we'll talk about after break. And it will send a neuron out to the post-central gyrus. So let's say that I scraped up my knee, and it hurts. So this neuron is going to end up right here and synapse with a processing neuron that will then interpret that electrical current as pain and project it back to my knee. Okay? If I cut my lip, and that hurts, the neuron from my thalamus will go out to this region where all the neurons dealing with my lips are located. Okay? And maybe it's cold instead of pain. But the post-central gyrus is formed of the neurons that are processing this incoming sensory information from the periphery of your body. If you turn the page, or at the bottom actually of page 64, you'll see this diagram. This is called a homunculus. And it's a mapping done by multiple surgeries on patients that were awake, and it does two things. The image that you see is showing the location of the sensory processing coming in from the various locations of the body. So the knee is done at the top of the longitudinal fissure, all right, and then we have the hand and then the face, lips are down near the lateral sulcus. And then the size of the image has to do with the number of neurons that are involved in processing that incoming information. So the lips are really sensitive, the fingers are really sensitive, and so we have larger drawings showing the higher number of concentrations. So when we did the skin lab, and you did the 2-point localization, how close could you get the 2 sharp points before it felt like one? So wherever they have a higher number of receptors, you're going to see a larger number of neurons involved in that processing. Okay? So that would be on both sides of the body in the parietal lobe. So that's the primary processing area for incoming senses of pain, touch, temperature, discriminative touch, pressure, all of those somatic afferents are going to come into that area. Then in the area around that, we have the association area. So this is the general somesthetic association. And again, this is where things make sense. All right, so looking at the table and knowing that this is a wood grain pattern was visual association, touching my lecture notes and recognizing that I'm touching paper, all right, versus feeling an orange or skin or gravel involves the association area. Okay? And then kind of down at the base of that is the taste. And then smell is kind of on the wrapped along the inside, so I'm going to kind of just draw that in green here because it's wrapped around on the inside of the temporal lobe. Okay. So smell, you can smell, yes.
So it's in the parietal lobe, but it...
What's on the end of it? Smell is, taste is parietal, right where it joins temporal, and then smell would be on the inside of temporal. I'm on the, wrapped around the deep surface there. So, when I was in high school, for some reason, my older sister, who was a year older than I, and my younger sister, who was 2 years young, we decided to throw my parents a party, a dinner party, just for the two of them. And we had a tiny little room, about 10 by 12, which is where we kept the TV. Well, we didn't have a TV then. Where we kept the piano and the bird cage, and you know, it had room for one chair, I think. And we called it the music room. And we set up a card table and a fancy tablecloth and china and made spaghetti, really fancy, with, you know, vegetarian meatballs. And my sister created a sculpture out of paper mache of a woman carrying a vase over her shoulder. And we sent printed invitations and invited our parents to this dinner. And the day, that afternoon that we fixed it, the three of us girls all came down with the flu. So I can remember lying on the floor of the music room while my parents ate their fancy meal, wanting to go throw up. And for a year after that, I couldn't smell tomato sauce or spaghetti sauce without having those similar feelings of nausea, okay? Association. So even the primary smell would be just smelling it, but associating it with the rest of feeling ill comes from that association area. So with taste, all right, primary processing is just the taste, the sweet, the sour, the bitter, the umami, the meaty taste of something. And then if you have good feelings about it or bad feelings or good things associated with that, then that becomes the association component, all right? So with each of our sensory aspects. All right. Now let's move to, there's a page in there on language, which I've kind of, well, we'll get to language in a minute. Let me talk about frontal lobe first, because that's involved with speech. All right, so frontal lobe, I made this person really smart by giving them a big frontal lobe. It involves two aspects, okay? Thinking and motor. So it's voluntary motor, and then thinking is reasoning and judgment and logic. It also includes in part of personality. Okay, there's another part of the brain we'll talk about on Monday that includes emotions and personality. So this area of the brain right here is known as the prefrontal cortex. And that's where you're going to get the thinking part. It's also where you can get part of the personality part. So people get injured there, shot there, and their personality changes. Just behind that, we have kind of an association area. I'll put dotted lines there, known as the premotor area. And this is what I talked about on Tuesday, where I said you don't have to think about every muscle you need to activate to walk, or type on a keyboard, or text, or speak. Though speak is a different premotor area. You play a musical instrument, and you have the piece memorized, you don't have to think about what note you're playing next. All right, so this would be what we talked about with short association fibers, where we would have our primary motor cortex and the the primary motor cortex or motor area is the precentral gyrus. So if we make this the frontal lobe, and this the precentral gyrus, the gray matter that makes up the precentral gyrus are the cell bodies of the motor neurons that are going down the spinal cord to the anterior gray horn. So if I want to move my knee in the same area that would have been the sensory processing, but in the frontal lobe, I would have upper motor neurons. They're going to go down my spinal cord to synapse with lower motor neurons in the anterior gray horn, and those will go out to muscles that flex or extend my knee. All right, so that gray matter is all of these upper motor neurons that we'll talk about a week from Monday. If I want to move my lips, all right, muscle neurons that go to my lips. If I want to move my toes and my feet, neurons that go down there. So the precentral gyrus is gray matter formed of the cell bodies of these upper motor neurons. Right? So to activate them in sequence when I don't need to think about every single thing I'm doing, short association fibers will go from the premotor area to the primary motor area and activate those neurons. The premotor area for speech is right about this area. And this is known as Broca's area or the motor speech area. So someone who has difficulty speaking after a stroke, it's typically not a problem with moving their lips or moving their tongue. All right, they can do that okay. But it's figuring out the sequence to do that in order to form the right word. And there's a variety of forms. Sometimes they want to say something and they say the same thing over and over and over. So they want to say, you know, come with me, and they'll go chuk, 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 chuk. And their sensory area is knowing that they're not saying what they want to say, because they can hear that and they can process it in the Wernicke's area, but they can't activate their motor area for speech to get the lips and the tongue to say it in the right order. Or it may just be a few words that are off, okay? They want to say get in the car, and then instead they say get in the rock. And they hear the word rock, and they know that's not the right word. So they try it again. And this is what speech pathologists do, is to work with these individuals on these various components. So it's more frustrating for them because they can hear that they're saying the wrong thing and trying to figure out what to say, whereas the person who can't interpret it, it's frustrating for the people around them because they can't. You have some people that have both problems, okay? These are common areas of paralysis, often affects the motor speech areas. Someone has a stroke and they're paralyzed on one side of the body. If you are right-handed, the motor speech area is on the left side of your brain, all right? That's where it's developed. If you are left-handed, you're in better luck because you have two speech areas. Your major one would be on the right side, but you would still have one on the left side. So it's easier for people who have a stroke that affects their speech area on the to be left-handed, because on either side they've got some component to work with. What blood vessel, what major blood vessel supplying the brain, if it or its branches are blocked by clots or ruptures, are going to cause this problem? What supplies this entire area of the brain, lateral brain? Anterior is medial. Comes out through the lateral sulcus. Middle cerebral. Okay? So middle cerebral artery comes out through the lateral sulcus and supplies almost this entire area. This model that shows the blood supply. Thank you for having it out here. So the blood vessels that you see here on the lateral surface have come out through the lateral sulcus, and you can see it right here, the middle cerebral arteries. Okay, so those are the most common, that or branches of it. If there's an aneurysm and a rupture or a blockage due to atherosclerosis, are the most common causes of paralysis or speech pathologies.
The middle cerebral comes or supplies
Through the front, supplies frontal, the parietal, and temporal lobes. Okay? Now this view is showing the anterior cerebral. So the medial surface of the frontal lobe, so it can, problems with the anterior can do some of the prefrontal cortex or this medial part of the parietal lobe, but only on the medial surface. So it's a little bit more limited. Okay? And then occipital lobe would be the posterior cerebral artery. All right. Then in this general area right here, we have the prefrontal or the frontal eye field area, and that's so you don't have to think when I look to the left and I turn my left eye that way, my right eye follows it instead of sitting over here by itself. All right? Or when I look up, both eyes look up, and I don't have to consciously activate both of them. So that's the frontal eye field area. And then finally, this area down here at the bottom is involved in long-term memory. So that's the basal forebrain. So between the hypothalamus and hippocampus is short-term, but long-term memory, it sends a circuitry back and forth to this basal forebrain. So that would be the inferior surface. This region right here. Okay, so this would be prefrontal cortex, this area right here involved with logic and thinking and solving calculus problems, figuring out what to wear for the day. And down here is the basal forebrain, that would be long-term memory. Okay.
But it's still in the prefrontal area.
It's inferior to it. It's still in the frontal lobe,
So like right
but it'd be
here?
this area right here. Yeah.
Okay.
Where's the frontal eye area?
Have it in here.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll let you read the page on language on page 70. And now let's look at the cerebral nuclei. Page 72, I'm going to kind of cover tomorrow, and I can show